So just for context and clarification, before anybody gets mad that I even bothered to watch and review this film, I have COPD, which is a lung disease, so I'm in a lot of trouble should I catch COVID since it attacks the lungs. So if anybody should be offended that this movie exists, it's me. But I'm not offended. And I can see how for some people it does seem an extremely poor taste to make a movie about a dystopian future based on a real-world virus, a real pandemic. And my heart goes out. I have a lot of respect for those who've been affected. It's perfectly valid if you feel offended. I'm just saying I personally was not. And the way I see it is because cinema and pop culture in general has always reflected what's going on in the world. If you look at movies and TV from the 70s when we were in the Vietnam War, they were very dark, they were very gritty, they were very violent, which is why MASH, which was a show that presented the Vietnam War in a comedic light, was very controversial at the time because they're taking a serious subject, war, and putting a comedic spin on it. But now it's considered like one of the greatest shows ever. And also, filmmakers had no work during 2020, so if they want to make a dystopian future movie based on what's going on in the real world, that's understandable because they need work. Even if it wasn't high-quality work, they just needed to get paid. That's completely understandable. But yeah, you can tell this movie was made in less than a year because it just kind of throws you into the story without any exposition or context, though it can be argued the context was the year 2020, so we don't really need exposition because we already know what's going on because we were living it. But it still feels like this was based on a book, and they took out the first 20 pages or so, and they just kind of worked with the rest that was left. And even though this movie wasn't technically directed by Michael Bay, even though his name is on it, he did produce it, though he may as well have written and directed it because his fingerprints are all over this movie. The way things are shot, the lighting, and especially the writing. Everything is very exaggerated. The technology, the vision of this dystopian future, it's almost laughable. And I mean, with Michael Bay, you're not going to get well-made, high-quality cinema, but you're going to get at least enjoyable cinema. Not that the two are mutually exclusive. But this very much is a movie aimed at the YA novel crowd, so the same audience as like The Hunger Games, Divergent, because it very much has that style. And, that being said, even though the writing isn't very strong, the acting was actually pretty solid. And this is actually Sophia Carson, the main actress. This is her first movie that isn't a Disney Channel movie or some other movie that's aimed at the Disney Channel demographic. It's a very serious drama, though it is, again, like I said, a little bit laughably exaggerated. Some parts of it really are not that serious just because they're so silly. But, to transition from doing Disney Channel to dystopian future movie drama, that seems like a very dramatic shift. And that shouldn't have worked, but she's a natural. Like, you can't tell that she was a Disney Channel actress if this was the first thing that you'd seen her in. And also, it's a shame that Alexandra Daddario was wasted in this movie, because she's also a very talented actress and other stuff, but she's just wasted here. Now, her scenes in the movie are very good, and she worked with what she had, but they didn't give her that much to work with in the first place. Her character very much feels tacked on as an afterthought, just to make the movie 20 minutes longer. Because if you take her character out of the movie, if you take all of her scenes out of the movie, nothing about the main plot changes. She doesn't really affect the movie at all. The movie's only like an hour and 20 minutes, and I think, because they added her in very last minute. Sophia Carson had already been announced, like, right when the movie was announced, but it was like a month before the movie came out that they announced that Alexandra Daddario was in this movie, and the movie's like an hour and 20 minutes, so I think the original cut of the movie may have been like an hour, maybe even less. So we need to make this movie at least technically feature-length so people will rent it. So who cares if it's just an effect movie? It's just add extra scenes to make the movie longer. Which is weird, because maybe another 45 minutes or so could have improved it. And what's weird is there's deleted scenes on Blu-ray, and there's almost an hour of deleted scenes. None of those deleted scenes are scenes I thought should have stayed in the movie. They're all very much filler. And so I'm glad they were deleted, even though it makes the movie short, because none of those scenes would have particularly improved the movie. And, some of the characters needed to be fleshed out more. But I still had a lot of fun with this movie, especially the last 20 minutes. The last 20 minutes of this movie were really intense. And I actually cared about what was going to happen to the main characters, because the stakes at that point were really high. I was like, whoa, okay, yeah, I kind of want to see what's going to happen. Are they going to outrun the people who are basically the peacekeepers from the Hunger Games or the stormtroopers from Star Wars? I mean, there's even a thing where, KJ Apa, who I don't know him from a lot of stuff. I know that he's from, I think, Riverdale, but I don't watch Riverdale, but I know that everybody who watches Riverdale loves KJ Apa, even though this is literally the only thing I've seen him in. And he's pretty good in this movie, too. Like, there's a scene in the beginning because he's a delivery man, and, you know, the people who are basically the stormtroopers or the peacekeepers from Hunger Games, because he's immune, he's looked at as, you know, kind of like the dregs of society. It's very much like X-Men, where they call them muties. They call them muties. And that was a little silly. You know, keep moving, mutie scum. I was like, rebel scum, like in Star Wars. So they very much took little beats from those other kind of movies. And I thought that was kind of fun. They had a little bit of fun with that. So yeah, the dialogue's a little clunky. The writing's not very good. It may have benefited from maybe a longer runtime. But I still had a lot of fun with it because I tend to gravitate more towards YA dystopia stuff like Hunger Games and Divergent, and I very much kind of enjoyed this movie, even though it is not a very good movie. But in my opinion, I had fun with it. That's all that matters. I was entertained at the end of the day. So overall, I give this movie a B, an 8 out of 10, and a 4 out of 5 stars.